and welcome. News: bus crashed Pakistani pilgrims to Iraq. Obama takes the stage for Harris at Democratic National Convention (DNC). Pro-Palestinian protesters clash with U.S. police at DNC. Putin inspects troops with Kadyrov on Chechnya visit, and China's number 2 official visits Russia to strengthen ties. According to reports, no less than 28 pilgrims from Pakistan have been killed and 23 others wounded after their bus overturned in central Iran. Late on Tuesday, the accident took place in the central province of Yazd. There were 52 passengers on board when the bus crashed en route to the holy city of Karbala in Iraq for the Arbaeen pilgrimage. A technical defect in the vehicle's braking system caused the accident, according to a preliminary probe by traffic police in Yazd, report said on Wednesday. Millions of Shia Muslims are presently taking part in the Arbaeen pilgrimage, and they typically drive through Iran to reach their destination. Ali Malekzadeh, the Crisis Management Director General of Yazd, said, according to reports, that unfortunately 11 women and 17 men lost their lives in these accidents. 7 of the injured people are in critical condition, and 6 injured people have now left the hospital. Of the 23 people hurt, 6 have been discharged while 7 are in critical condition. He said the Arbaeen commemoration marks the 40th day of mourning for Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad and son of Imam Ali, who was killed in 680 AD on the plains of Karbala. Many pilgrims opt to walk 80 kilometers, 50 miles from the close-by city of Najaf, where Imam Ali is buried, to Karbala. Some 22 million pilgrims attended the commemoration in Karbala last year. Iran has one of the world's worst traffic safety records, with some 17,000 deaths yearly. That high death toll is blamed on disregard for traffic laws, unsafe vehicles, and insufficient emergency services in its vast rural areas. Talking U.S. 2024 election, Barack Obama, ex-United States President, has taken to the stage of Democratic National Convention (DNC) in a show of support for Kamala Harris in her 11th hour bid to become the country's next president in November's election. Obama walked onto the stage in Chicago to resounding applause from a crowd that has just heard from Obama's wife Michelle, Harris's husband Joe Emhoff, and other veterans of the party, as well as Republicans who had abandoned their party because of Donald Trump. The first black American who ever elected to the White House, 63-year-old Obama hurriedly showed his skills on an orator, paying tribute to President Joe Biden. As a man, he was proud to call president, but even prouder to call my friend. Acknowledging the scale of the fight facing Harris and her running mate Tim Walz to win the White House over the next 11 weeks, he urged people to fight for America we can believe in and get out the vote. This will be a tight race in a divided country, a country where too many Americans are still struggling, he cautioned. Donald Trump sees power as nothing more than a means to his ends, Obama added. We do not need 4 more years of bluster, bumbling, and chaos. We have seen the movie before, and we all know that the sequel is usually worse. America is ready for a new chapter, for a new story. We're ready for a president, Kamala Harris. Obama, who spoke for over half an hour, has thrown his considerable political capital behind Harris as she seeks to make history in November 5th and become the first woman and the first person of Black and South Asian descent to be elected as president. Obama was preceded on the stage by his wife Michelle, who was welcomed with loud applause, cheers, and whistles. The former First Lady spoke of the need for the country to turn the page on fear and division, and warned that Trump will try to distort Harris's truth, much as he did everything in his power to try to make people fear us, referring to her and her husband. Trump and his vice presidential running mate J.D. Vance are also brainstorming major battleground states this week in a bid to steer attention away from the convention in Chicago. Republicans who have left the party, including Trump's former White House press secretary Stephanie Grisham and former Trump voter Kyle Switzer, also addressed the Democrat convention on Tuesday. Still on U.S. 2024 elections and a link with the Israel war, in the United States, dozens of pro-Palestinian protesters charged a line of police in a powerful standoff with officers outside the Israeli consulate on the second night of the Democratic National Convention (DNC) in Chicago. On Tuesday, protesters chanted "Let them go" as police handcuffed at least 4 people and led them away from the demonstration. Officers carrying wooden clubs shouted "Move" and penned the demonstrators in the street, stopping them from marching. Some demonstrators set a U.S. flag on fire in the street at the celebratory roll call for Vice President Kamala Harris took place inside the United Center, about 3.2 kilometers, 2 miles away. Others carried Palestinian flags, with several others who wore black and covered their faces. As protesters regrouped and approached a line of police in riot gear in front of a Chicago skyscraper that houses the Israeli consulate, an officer said into a megaphone, "You are ordered to disperse immediately." A woman in front of the march shouted back with her own megaphone, "We are not scared of you." The group, which is not affiliated with a coalition of over 200 groups that organized Monday's protest, advertised the demonstration on Tuesday under the slogan "Make it Great Like '68", invoking the anti-Vietnam War protest that seized the city during the 1968 Democratic National Convention. The atmosphere, with rows of police in riot gear, was a stark contrast to a day earlier when thousands of pro-Palestinian activists, including families pushing babies in strollers, marched close to the convention site calling for a ceasefire. The consulate has been the site of several demonstrations since Israel's war on Gaza broke out in October. Meanwhile, the sites of demonstrations from the previous night were largely quiet. 13 people were arrested during Monday's protests, most of them related to a brief breach of security fencing within sight and sound of the United Center, the city's police superintendent said. Israel supporters, including some relatives of people taken captive by Hamas, assembled earlier in the day at a pro-Israel art installation not far from the consulate to call on U.S. leaders to continue backing Israel and pushing for the release of the captives. Alan Carr, CEO of the Israeli-American Council, condemned the pro-Palestinian protesters who have descended on Chicago this week, calling them fringe crazes and demanding U.S. leaders stand unequivocally with the state of Israel. More protests were planned throughout the week. Now in Russia, Vladimir Putin, Russian President, and Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov have inspected Chechen troops and volunteers getting ready to fight in Ukraine in Putin's first trip to the North Caucasus region since 2011. The surprise visit comes as Moscow fights to push Ukraine forces out of its Kherson region 2 weeks after they crossed the border in the biggest invasion of Russia since World War II. According to a transcript on the Kremlin's website, "As long as we have men like you, we are absolutely invincible," Putin told soldiers at the Russian Special Forces University, a training school in Chechnya's governments. "It is one thing to shoot at a shooting range here and another thing to put your life and health at risk. But you have an inner need to defend the fatherland and the courage to make such a decision." Kyiv's invasion across its northern border has been an embarrassment for Putin and his army, even as Russian forces continue their steady advances on the front line in eastern Ukraine. Kadyrov, a major Kremlin ally who has been sanctioned by the United States, told Putin in a different meeting that Chechnya had sent over 47,000 troops to Ukraine since the beginning of the war, including about 19,000 volunteers. Kadyrov has often described himself as Putin's foot soldier. While Putin has seldom visited Chechnya in recent years, the region has shaped him as a politician. As newly appointed prime minister in 1999, Putin launched the brutal Second Chechen War against separatist fighters and hardliners in the mostly Muslim territory. The massive ground offensive, supported by persistent artillery fire and aerial bombing campaigns, killed no less than 50,000 people and left the capital, Grozny, in ruins. Kadyrov, who Putin made Chechnya leader in 2007, has used money from Moscow to rebuild the shattered territory, but rights groups say Kadyrov rules through violence and intimidation. On Wednesday, Chinese Premier Li Qiang is set to meet with Russian leaders in Moscow during a 4-day visit to Russia and its allies Belarus, as Beijing waves of Western criticism of its strong Kremlin relations amid the war in Ukraine. Li, China's number 2 official under leader Xi Jinping, will meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin and hold meetings on China-Russia cooperation and strategic relations with Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin, reports said on Wednesday. He hailed the two countries' ties after his arrival at Moscow's Vnukovo airport on Tuesday, where he was received by Russian officials and an honor guard. China-Russia relations in the new era have shown new vigor and vitality with stronger mutual political trust, fruitful cooperation in various fields, deeply rooted friendship, and close and effective international coordination, Lee said in a statement released upon his arrival, adding the visit was targeted at boosting mutually beneficial cooperation. The Premier's visit for a long-standing annual meeting with the Russian Prime Minister is the first to Russia by a high-level Chinese official since a surprise military incursion by Ukrainian forces into the Russian border region of Kursk 2 weeks ago. Russia has been scrambling to repel that assault, which marks the first time foreign troops entered Russian territory since World War II and comes amid rising pressure for a conclusion to the war in Ukraine, which started in 2022 with Russia's full-scale invasion of its neighbor. In reaction to an inquiry on the situation, a spokesperson for China's foreign ministry last week called on all parties not to expand the battlefield, intensify fighting and fuel the flame, saying China will continue to work for a political settlement of the crisis. Beijing has faced mounting scrutiny and pressure from the West to curtail the export of dual-use goods such as aerospace, manufacturing and technology equipment to Russia, which Western leaders and Kyiv have alleged are propping up the Russian war effort. Chinese officials have sought to present the country as a neutral, aspiring peace broker in the war, but have had limited high-level contact with Kyiv while continuing to strengthen ties with Moscow across trade, diplomacy and security. Last month, China hosted a top Ukrainian official for the first time since Russia's invasion of the country nearly 2.5 years ago. Trade between China and Russia hit record highs last year, surpassing the target of $240 billion ahead of schedule. Russia has grown hugely reliant on China's markets, goods and investments since it was slapped with broad international sanctions following its Ukraine invasion. Bilateral trade increased by more than a quarter year-on-year in 2023 from 2022, but has only grown about 1.6% between January and July this year over the same period last year, according to China's customs data. Lee is expected to end his 4-day trip in Belarus, where he will meet Belarusian Prime Minister Roman Golubchenko for an in-depth exchange of views on bilateral relations and cooperation in various fields, China's foreign ministry said on Monday. On more stories and still dwelling in Russia, Russian soldiers defect to Ukraine after months of spying. According to Freedom for Russian Legion, the I Want to Leave project and the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, a Russian soldier has defected to Ukraine. The defected soldier with the call sign Silver was an active serviceman for the unit's term before volunteering for the Freedom for Russia Legion during the winter of 2024. The Legion, a group of Russian dissidents fighting for Ukraine, he said. Silva, a 24-year-old from Siberia who joined the Russian army in 2021, gave his reasons for defecting in an interview by the I Want to Leave project, a Ukrainian government initiative which receives appeals from Russian servicemen in Ukraine wishing to surrender. He took part in the fighting in Ukraine's eastern Avdiivka area from the Russian side of the border as a drone operator. He explained in the interview he had also earlier served in China's border with Russia. The Freedom for Russian Legion said Silva was a member of the resistance for many months and transmitted vital operational information to us, the location of forces and equipment plans tasked in a specific section of the front. Escaping the storm unit, Silva activated explosive devices in the unit's headquarters, extremely wounding the commander and many senior officers, according to the Legion. Ukraine's intelligence department said the operation to get Silva out was named Otret. The Defense Intelligence said on Tuesday the Russia was motivated to cooperate with Ukraine by the systematic war crimes and other crimes of the command, including extrajudicial executions, beatings and robberies in the occupation unit. Silva claimed in the interview that he had seen some Russian soldiers killed by their own commander. The Defense Intelligence said Ukraine was able to obtain significant intelligence on the location, number and intentions of Russian forces in a particular frontline area because of the interaction with Silva. In African shores, Sudan reports over 350 cholera cases in new outbreak. Over 350 cases of cholera have been recorded in a new outbreak in Sudan in just a few weeks. The difficulties in reaching and registering victims amid the continuing humanitarian crunch triggered by the country's civil war have led experts to speculate that many more people than this may have been infected. Mohammed Ibrahim, health minister, said at least 22 people have died from the disease and declared a cholera epidemic after many weeks of heavy rain, which has contaminated drinking water. The cholera epidemic is just the newest catastrophe for Sudan, where fighting between the army and the Rapid Support Forces (RSF), a paramilitary group, has been spreading around the country since April 2023. Cholera is not new to Sudan. In 2017, a former outbreak killed at least 700 people and infected closely 22,000 in less than 2 months. Outside of the newest outbreak, the World Health Organization, WHO, has recorded 78 deaths from cholera between the start of this year and July 28th in Sudan, while some 2,400 people have been infected across the country as a whole. 2 weeks ago, the Sudanese Health Ministry first reported this latest outbreak when 17 people had died from the disease and 268 cases had been reported in Kassala, El Ghazari and Khartoum. This has now increased to 22 deaths and 354 cases. Sudan has been experiencing particularly heavy seasonal rains since June, with floods killing dozens of people. Over 20,000 people have been displaced by the flooding across 11 of Sudan's 18 states since June, according to the United Nations International Organization for Migration (IOM). Water supplies have also become contaminated with cholera due to the flood waters mixing with sewage. Tariq Jasarevich, whose WHO spokesperson, said, according to report, that data showed most of the detected cases were in people who had not been vaccinated against cholera. He added that the WHO was working with the Sudanese health authorities and partners to implement a vaccination campaign across the 9 localities in 5 provinces where the disease has been recorded. Now, Kenyan man held for dismembered bodies escapes custody. Officials said on Tuesday a suspect who police said confessed the killing of 42 women was being detained over the detection of dismembered bodies in Kenya's capital has escaped from police custody. Gilbert Mesengeli, acting Inspector General of Police, said Collins Jumaisi Kalusha escaped along with 12 other inmates of Eritrean nationality who had been apprehended for being in the country illegally. Mesengeli also said, according to reports, that disciplinary steps had been taken against 8 officers, including the area and station commanders and officers who were on duty. Our preliminary investigations indicated that the escape was aided by insiders, considering that officers were deployed accordingly to guard the station, he said. A police report said the inmates escaped early Tuesday morning after they cut through wire mesh in the cell and scaled the perimeter wall. The escape was revealed as breakfast was being taken into the cell. Kulasha, 33, was being detained at the police station after a court permitted detectives 7 more days to probe his alleged crimes before charging him. In July, he was arrested after 10 bodies and many body parts were found wrapped in plastic bags in the Kwere area of Nairobi. Police said Kulusha confessed to killing 42 women, including his wife. The police station from which the suspect escaped was cordoned off with crime scene tape, and senior police officers visited it on Tuesday afternoon. 2 other suspects who were arrested after being found with cell phones belonging to some of the deceased women are to return to court next Monday. Police in July said the bodies were found after relatives of one missing woman said they had a dream in which she told them to search in Kwere. The relatives asked a local driver to help, and he discovered the bodies wrapped in sacks. 6 bodies were identified after DNA tests, but many body parts remain unidentified. We take a breather, and when we come back, I'll bring you more stories, particularly from Nigeria. Please. Welcome back. Now, stories from Nigeria. We begin with federal government forms 10-member panel to enforce local government autonomy ruling. The federal government has formed a 10-member committee to implement the Supreme Court judgment delivered on 11th July 2024, granting financial autonomy to local government in Nigeria. Shegun Omohison, Director Information and Public Relations in the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation (OSGF), revealed this on Tuesday in Abuja. He said the SGF, Senator George Akume, who inaugurated the Interministerial Committee, will himself chair it. Members are the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Member, Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Accountant General of the Federation, Governor, Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN), Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Finance, Chairman, Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, representative of state governors and representative of local governments. The committee's primary aim is to make sure local governments are granted full autonomy, letting them to function effectively without interference from state governments. This move is in line with President Bola Tinubu's efforts to give appropriate implementation to the provisions of the Constitution, which recognizes local government as the third tier of government, the statesman added. And finally, on the news, NLC threatens strike protest over Ajairu's police summons. Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, has officially written to the police stating why NLC President Joe Ajairu could not honor an invitation by the police yesterday. In light of the potential face-off between the Labour Union and the Nigeria Police, however, NLC asked its members to be prepared to begin a nationwide strike if need be. Amnesty International AI Nigeria likewise accused the federal government of trying to undermine and intimidate NLC and its leadership with allegations of terrorism financing. Also, International Trade Union Confederation (ITUC) expressed worry over what it called intensifying attacks on the trade union movement in Nigeria. Ajairu was billed to appear before the police investigation team yesterday for interrogation over allegations of terrorism financing and treasonable felony, but the Labour movement urged the police to shift the date to August 29th. In a letter to the police authorities by NLC's lawyers, the Femi Falana Chambers, Ajairu said the notice was short. He added that he only received the police invitation yesterday when he had already planned an engagement. The letter, signed by a principal partner in Falana's Chambers, Samuel Ogala, said Ajairu will be set to appear before the police team next Wednesday after details of police allegations against him had been stated. The law firm stated in the letter addressed to the Inspector General of Police and dated August 20th, 2024, "We have the instruction of Comrade Joe Ajairu to inform you that he was unable to honor your invitation on Tuesday, August 20th, 2024, in view of the fact that your invitation letter was received by him just yesterday. He has an engagement and that had been fixed before the receipt of the invitation." NLC said Ajairu's summons was premised on a groundless and politically motivated probe into alleged terrorism financing, cybercrime subversion, criminal conspiracy, and treasonable felony. In the communique signed by NLC Deputy President Comrade Ado Minjibir, the Congress stated, "The NEC directs all affiliates and state councils to immediately commence the process of mobilizing their members across the nation." NLC also called on all civil society allies and the general public to stand in solidarity with it in this critical moment. The NEC meeting was summoned to discuss on the recent developments surrounding the invitation of Joe Ajairu by the Nigerian police. A recap of major stories says bus crash in Iran kills 28 Pakistani pilgrims to Iraq. Obama takes the stage for Harris at Democratic National Convention (DNC). Pro-Palestinian protesters clash with U.S. police at DNC. Putin inspects troops with Kadyrov on Chechnya visit, and China's number 2 official visits Russia to strengthen ties. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.